The Atlanta Falcons offense turned in an abysmal performance yesterday. Michael Penix Jr. had the worst start of his young career, and everybody is looking for answers and pointing fingers. There's plenty of blame to go around after this one. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Now let's rip off the band-aid and get into the film. Things were off from the beginning in this one, and we're going to start with a play that I'm honestly surprised that Michael Penix missed, and it's a concept that he missed last week as well. And so we're going to see that Kyle Pitts is going to come in motion here, and then he's going to run down the seam and almost run a bender route here. And if that sounds familiar to you, that's because we talked about that same concept last week in the red zone offense breakdown. And we're just going to see that Penix misses Pitts here. And I'm not necessarily sure what's going on at this point, but here it's the same thing as last week. We have the linebackers' shoulders, they're turned to the outside more than anything. This safety up top cannot help. Penix, he starts pumping the football here as if he knows that this route to Pitts is going to come wide open, and it does, but he does not pull the trigger and instead sails the ball over the top to Drake London, and this is just a miss that it can't keep happening. And we saw it last week against the Vikings. Similar situation. The linebacker's shoulders are square. The safety has no chance to make this play, and the backside does not either. This is an anticipatory throw that the best QBs in this league can make, and it's a throw that Penix made last year. And so I'm not really sure why he's struggling with this concept, but it is noticeable now that he is missing Pitts in this area of the field. So many people have been asking, where's the deep ball in this offense? And in week one, we knew that Darnell Mooney was out, and we had assumed that when he was going to return, we would start seeing some of these deeper passes hit, but that is just not the case. Unfortunately, it seems like the rust is really having an effect on Mooney, who's dropping routine passes that he always caught last season. And this one is really disappointing because this is probably going to be Michael Penix's best throw over the middle this game. He reads this very well. He delivers it on time in rhythm to Mooney. It should have been an easy completion and a chunk yardage play, and it just doesn't happen. And this is another miss early in the game where Mooney is not able to bring in the football. Penix does a really good job, again, making the right read and getting this ball to his guy on time in rhythm, and Mooney drops it. And so this is extremely frustrating as a young quarterback. You're on the road, you're playing a division opponent. These are the kinds of shots and passes that help you get going, that help you really start to find your rhythm and get comfortable in this game. But they were never able to do so, and it's clear that the rust and the chemistry is just not there between Mooney and Penix right now. And it wasn't just Mooney that Penix wasn't on the same page with yesterday. We're going to see here that Ray McLeod, Penix is expecting him to run a deep out. And that does not happen, and it's just another blown opportunity here for this Falcons offense. I love this design, using this right here, this screen, which is a well-known staple play in the offense, to make the defense gravitate towards that play. And look, Ray has all of this space. This should have been, an easy throw and catch. For whatever reason, Ray does not run that route that Penix was expecting, and you have another lost opportunity for this offense. And we talk about the misses adding up and starting to get to you as a quarterback. This play is frustrating for both Penix and Mooney because there's clear contact at the top of the route. I'm not really sure why they didn't make that call, but that's besides the point. It's the effect that this has on just the quarterback's mental, but the entire offense's mental. And you can tell that this group was deflated and that there just didn't really seem to be a lot of energy, and especially after those passes weren't falling at the beginning of the game. And that was something that they just weren't able to shake off for the rest of the match. Penix had more time to sit and survey the field this week. The Panthers were running a lot of zone coverage, and that seemed to almost work against him. Penix is normally very good at getting the ball out very quickly, but he was asked to sit and read the defense. Here, we see that the process is sped up for him because the Falcons only have 10 seconds on the clock, and he does exactly what you want to do. He rips this in here. This is a nice cover 3 beater. and we're able to, get a big chunk play. And these kinds of routine passes that we've seen from Penix were just not falling, and he was having issues deciphering what he was seeing in this hurry up, offense here to close out the half. The defense doesn't have time to put a bunch of dressing on their coverage. And, I think that looking through this film, that Carolina did a good job pre-snap of disguising most of their looks, and it caused Penix to be a bit confused at times when he was going through the tape. But here you see that he makes a great decision and a great throw. Unfortunately, that was just not the theme of the day. The pick six that happened does a really good job of illustrating my point. You're going to see here that it looks like we're going to have some kind of cover 2, possibly cover 4 based on this pre-snap alignment. But as the ball is snapped, I want you to watch the safety here, and he's actually going to creep up and take over this spot. You're going to see J.C. Horn get into his back pedal. He's worried about this deep third. You're going to see the safety come over the middle. He's going to take care of this deep third. And then you're going to see this outside cornerback do the same and shift here. And so what we really are going to have is cover 3. But what Penix sees right now looks like cover 2. And again, we're processing. We're holding the ball longer than normal. And, we never even think about or coming back to this Ray McCloud look, which just really unfortunate because he's wide open here. Penix tries to get the ball out quick to the running back. He does not think for a second that there's somebody sitting on the flat. He doesn't look before he throws, and it's just a very uncharacteristic mistake from Penix that, we haven't really seen plays like that from him as a young quarterback. And, unfortunately, that was kind of a trend for this game. Was a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes from Mike. And we have a similar situation on the second interception of the day. Again, it looks like we're seeing some form of cover 2. We got our 2 high safeties up here. We're just coming off a game against the Brian Flores defense where you saw a ton of cover 2, a ton of 2 high. So credit to the Panthers for realizing that, taking advantage of it, and sending some different looks Penix's way. You're going to see this safety steps up and down here, and then this other one comes over the back, and we're actually going to have some form of cover 1. And unfortunately, Penix just does not make the right read here, and he gets this ball out a little late. Yes, Ray McCloud slips, but the cornerback is up here sitting on this deep out route. And since you're playing the Falcons, that's a staple play of theirs, and it makes it a little bit easier to kind of predict what's coming. And we're going to get to that point later about how, predictable the Falcons passing attack is and can be. What concerned me the most about this game wasn't the mistakes. Quarterbacks are going to throw interceptions. Young quarterbacks are going to have bad games. But we are seeing mistakes that Michael Penix just has not made before. And he was, yes, careless with the football, but he also just was not looking before he was throwing. We saw the pick 6 earlier to Bijan, but this is another one to Charlie Warner. You can't just turn around and throw that without looking. Penix, he really does not want to throw the ball away. I think that's probably, one of the things that I admire about his game, is willingness to stand in the pocket and hold onto the football. But you have to know when to throw the ball away and to not create a negative play when there didn't need to be one. Falcons could have survived, and now you went from being in about 2nd and 7 to 3rd and about, I think it was 3rd and 13 following this play. And that's just a mistake that can't happen. And, the misses that we saw this week, I mentioned before, when Penix misses, he's at least precise, and that the ball is not, going into harm's way. But we just weren't seeing the precision that we're used to from Penix. This is a throw that he makes in his sleep, and he just completely misses Drake London on this route. And it's really hard to, point to one specific thing that's causing all of this. But, it's clear to me that the Falcons offense and what's going on right now is not sustainable. And Zac Robinson is going to have to come up with some answers to help get his quarterback going. We all want simple answers to complicated problems. But the fact of the matter is that it is not really any one person's fault. But we're going to talk about Zac Robinson and what he's asking his quarterback to do and what we're seeing from his quarterback as a result. And Penix's most significant struggles as a passer at the University of Washington came when having to operate middle of the field concepts. Penix was not very efficient at attacking the middle of the field, and he was not asked to do so a lot at his time in Washington. And the middle of the field is where quarterbacks make their money in this league. Last year, it appeared that Penix was, a pretty decent middle of the field passer. And, that was the result from the very small sample size that we got. But what defenses were allowing was they were daring him to hit those deep sideline passes. Those are throws that are very difficult for a lot of quarterbacks in the league, but Penix showed that he can hit those well. And so defenses have decided that they're going to take away those sideline shots, those shots outside the numbers, and they're going to leave the middle of the field open and dare him to hit those opportunities. I think Zac Robinson has tailored this passing attack around some of these middle of the field struggles, but there is an argument to be made that by limiting those opportunities from him, he's making them all the much harder for his quarterback when they present themselves. And so if you're not getting the reps, if you're not feeling comfortable with that in practice, and if you don't have many plays that are even designed to attack the middle of the field, you're obviously going to struggle when you get those concepts presented to you and when defenses decide we're not going to just let you attack outside the numbers anymore. And so this is something where, yes, Michael Penix needs to obviously grow, develop, and adjust his game to be able to, attack the middle of the field, but his offensive coordinator is not really doing him many favors. I think that we've seen, a couple of routes here and there. I've shown the Pitts route, but outside of that, we're not really seeing, a lot of concepts that really go after attacking the middle of the field. And, you want to protect your player to a point, but once you start hiding him, defensive coordinators are too good at their jobs and they're going to figure that out really quick. And that's what we've seen so far early on. I think my biggest issues when it comes to Zac Robinson, it's not the individual play calls. It's that this team looks completely unprepared for large segments of the game. They have no real identity. What is this offense? Are you a running offense? Doesn't seem like you're committed to running the football. You came out yesterday and were throwing it early and often, and didn't really seem to have any desire to establish the run. And if you are going to be that, elite passing attack, then you have to have plays that attack the middle of the field, or you're just making the job all the more easier for the opposing secondary. And so I am not really sure what the answer to that issue is. And I can't really pull up clips that kind of show, the lack of game flow and the lack of preparedness outside of the, all the penalties and things like that we've, gone into detail here. And this offense is just living off of Bijan Robinson highlights right now. They are moving the ball, but those, the yardage is really a smokescreen for the abysmal play-to-play performance that we're seeing. And it just kind of feels like we're picking plays out of a hat and seeing if they work. Nothing is tied together and nothing is setting up another play later on. And if we are having those, they're very few and far in between, and other defenses have already kind of figured out their staple plays for the offense. So, Zac Robinson is really going to have to sit down with Michael Penix and figure out, what's going on, what is he seeing. And we're hearing that he's going to be sitting down, on the sidelines now. He's not going to be in the booth anymore, and maybe that helps. He obviously can't make the throws for the quarterback, and there were plays and throws that Michael Penix should not make, and throws that he honestly has not made, in his career. And by that, I mean mistakes, bad throws. This is the kind of quarterback play that, we've seen before him. And it was the reason that he got, the keys to the franchise. And so I don't think there's any reason to give up on Penix or to bail, because this is part of, the territory. When you have a young quarterback, when you have a guy who only has 6 career starts, this is, you know, the other side of that conversation that people did not want to have. You know, it's not, growth is not linear either. And that's a very important thing to remember, in that there are going to be ups and downs through this process. We're going to learn a lot about this football team by how they respond next week. We're going to learn a lot about Michael Penix. But so far, this offense has failed as a group. And, you know, honestly, that is a reflection on coaching, because the accountability starts at the top. But this team is going to have to figure it out, because the season is just starting. Thanks for checking out today's video. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe and share so that you can help this page grow. We appreciate all of the love that we've been getting, and I appreciate every single like. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of All Trey Phases.